Welcome to my American History Notes, where I read from the conclusions I've drawn from studying American history. Conclusions you might not agree with or might even be offended by, but the important thing is that you'd have your own conclusions from your own study of American history. Now, I have interstitial lung disease, so I may cough. I apologize. I also have cats. One might walk in front of us, so I apologize for that too, if that bothers you. Um, so let's begin. We're finishing up with Ronald Reagan's administration. Now, President Reagan was and still is an immensely popular president. People at the time credited him with restoring America's pride in itself after the disastrous 1970s. I saw him speak in 1987 at a National Federation of Independent Businesses luncheon held at the very hotel where he had nearly been assassinated in 1981. He was a convincing public speaker who made the hearer believe that he truly believed what he was saying. Nancy Reagan was a sharp contrast to the folksy Rosalind Carter. Nancy was more stylish and seemed more concerned with china patterns and luncheons than political issues. It was known, however, that she had played a role in her husband's political ascent and was not a shallow or indifferent political wife. She raised nearly $1 million to refurbish the White House from politically motivated wealthy friends and spent $200,000 on new china, which received a great deal of criticism. In her husband's second term, a public relations campaign was underway to make her look less elitist. She began to make drug abuse her cause, and it was revealed that she was included in the upper echelon decision making and was described by White House insiders as indispensable and a savvy advisor, both of which made critics of Reagan extremely uncomfortable. The New York Times in 1986 described Nancy Reagan as having expanded the role of First Lady into a sort of associate presidency. That's had the from quote from the Time article. Donald Reagan, Times article. Donald Reagan, former chief of staff, Reagan, did her image harm in his book For the Record by stating that she interfered far too much and revealing that she consulted an astrologist before making some scheduling decisions for her husband. Speaking of astrology, the online encyclopedia Wikipedia had this interesting comment to make about President Reagan's religious beliefs. Quote, though he rarely attended church as an adult, Reagan was a Christian from his childhood and frequently addressed Christian groups. In March 1978, a letter to a liberal Methodist minister who was skeptical about Christ's divinity and accused Reagan of a limited Sunday school level theology, Reagan argued strongly for Christ's divinity using C.S. Lewis's trilemma. Despite his personal wishes and beliefs, his state funeral was an interfaith service. Another source accused him of saying that his Christianity was third behind his being an actor and a politician. These contradictory things are hard to sort out and need to be investigated by his biographers. While his diplomatic relations with the papacy from 1984 are disturbing, it seems clear that President Reagan was at least as devout a Christian as many of his fellow presidents. In one of his pre presidency radio shows, he argued for the primacy of the King James Bible over a modern version, the Good News Bible. A collection of his radio shows, you can actually see them on the internet, or you could at one time. It has been said, or hear them, I'm sorry. It has been said, though, that being the leader of the most powerful nation on earth is not consistent with New Testament Christianity, just as it was said by the early church leaders that being the emperor of Rome was not consistent with being a Christian. You investigate for yourself. Quote, consider it, take advice, and speak your minds, Judges 19:30. We lived in an age, words for words' sake, we lived in an age not of heroes, but of wannabes in 1981. Like became used by 1982 as an interjection to accent any pause in a sentence, as in I was like really hungry. In 1984, a young upperly mobile professional was called a yuppie. Our addiction to the our addiction to the addicted we lived with was called codependency in 1987. Now, here's some things in the past few classes I think you should remember. During a speech at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri in 1946, Winston Churchill coined what term for the division between the Free West and Soviet dominated Eastern Europe? Two, the failed attempt by CIA trained Cuban exiles to invade Castro's Cuba was called by what phrase? Three, what is the name of the showdown between President Kennedy and the Soviet Premier Khrushchev over Russian missiles in Cuba? Four, President Johnson pushed for what piece of legislation that would transform American society in an attempt to right past wrongs regarding the status of Black citizens? Five, what precipitated the protest of tens of thousands of American young people who did not want to serve in the military? Six, What scandal brought down the Nixon presidency? 7. Which constitutional amendment lowered the voting age from 18 to 18 from 21? 8. Who was the first American president to publicly proclaim to be a born again Christian? 9. The Camp David Accords were an effort to establish a state of peace between what two Middle Eastern countries? 10. What was the name of the crisis involving Americans held hostage by a Middle Eastern government that affected a presidential election? 11. Which president had served also as president of the Screen Actors Guild? 12. Who was the first woman associate of the Justice of the Supreme Court? 13. Which presidential scandal involved Admiral John Poindexter and Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North? 14. What Middle Eastern leader was denied a visa to enter the U.S. to speak to the United Nations by President Reagan's administration? I think if you know the answers to those things, you'll be pretty conversant in that era of American history. It's not deep. I know many of you know a lot more things. I've seen comments. You studied it. You lived it. It's really interesting to you, and I hope you will dig into it. But you should know the basics, and I hope you will study American history. Thank you.